Okay, so I've almost got this room all prepped. First thing, of course, you're going to want to pull the carpet out. Carpet removal is very easy. Just grab it from the corner like this and pull it up off of the floor. And then once you get it started, you can grab it with your hands and just keep on pulling. Now, if you're trying to save that carpet for something, you're going to want to keep it in some larger pieces, and you'll probably need help to get it out. But if you don't care about that, then just cut it up into smaller pieces so you can carry it out much easier. Next, after that, you're going to want to pull up the padding. It's very easy. Just grab it and start pulling, and it rolls right up. Now, the best part about that is it will expose a lot of the staples on the floor, and hopefully the installers don't go too staple happy with it, because you are going to have to remove all those staples. Here's two ways you can remove them. If you take a flat scraper and a hammer like this and just bang them staples out of there, you can pull a lot of them out pretty quickly like that. For the stubborn ones that you can't get a hold of that way, you can take a screwdriver and kind of get one side started and then use a pair of pliers like this to pull them out. Also, if they're sticking up and you don't have a flat scraper, you can always grab them with a pair of dikes and pull them up out of the floor. And if they're sticking up like this and there's nothing under them, it's just a staple sticking up, I have found that it is just much easier just to take a hammer and bang them back down into the plywood and forget about them. All right, next you're going to want to pull out these tack strips. And I have found that this kind of a flat pry bar like this is the best way to do that. If you notice, I'm kind of going in at an angle right here and go in, of course, where all the nails are at. And just pry up a little bit because you don't want to try to break these things into a million pieces. It just makes a big mess. And when you're getting rid of those tack strips, be very careful because those nails that are sticking up to grab the carpet are like little hypodermic needles almost, and they are very, very sharp. So they'll cut you just only touching them slightly. So after all that, you're going to want to vacuum. And while you're vacuuming, it's a good opportunity to find nails that are sticking up like this one. If they are, just bang them back down, and it'll also give you an opportunity to find staples because the staples are usually sticking up and they'll hang up the vacuum cleaner. So once you've got the floor pretty much vacuumed up, this step here you don't have to do, but I want to do it because I don't personally like the looks of quarter round. I would rather remove my trim and put the hardwood up closer to the drywall. But here, let me show you a quick demonstration of how I remove trim. And I'm going to replace this trim here with some much wider trim anyway. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take a razor knife and cut the caulk line. Cut the caulk line like that. You can even go over it a couple times. So what I like to do is drive this flat painter's tool in there to get it started. Working on one end may be helpful. And then once you get it started, you can take this pry bar and get it behind there. And I always put it with the curve so that the pry bar is going away from the wall. And I'll show you why. Once you get that in there, when you're pressing like this to pull the trim, the pressure is going in behind the trim, and you're not going to scratch up the drywall or dent the drywall. So do this to get it started. There we go. All right, once you get it started, you can flip to the other end, and instead of prying up like this, so you're going to damage the drywall, I kind of turn it to the side and put a little down pressure on it so that the point down here is where the pressure is at, and you're not getting it on the wall. All right, so just find the next nail, kind of keep one hand behind it, find the next nail, and remember, I'm turning it like this, and I'm pushing down to keep the pressure back here. See that? I'm not touching the wall where the paint is, and just keep working it back like that. See, he's pulling away the paper. Cut it. There you go. So once you got your floor ready, and by ready I mean all the nails pounded down, the staples removed, all the dust and debris vacuumed up. Once you've done all that, you're ready to lay down your vapor barrier. I'm using this red rosin paper. You're going to want to consult your manufacturer's instructions to see what they recommend. So also you want to make sure your flooring is acclimated. I've installed this stuff before, and I usually only let it acclimate for a couple of days, and I've never had any problems, but I'm going to leave that part up to you. So if you have one of these slap staplers, I would just staple one corner for now until you spread out the paper. All right, so there's what mine looks like. I've got 2 rows in there, and all these areas like this, just piece them in like the closets. So normally you would start the wood on the longest wall in the room that you're working with, and also run the direction of the wood perpendicular to the floor joist. In my case, I'm starting here because I have an existing floor that was already here from years ago. So what I did was I added 1 row until I was just past this corner right here where the old floor is done. So now I've snapped a chalk line from here down the hallway to the end of the row right there so we can keep it straight. I measured from the wall on each end, from here and from down there, and then snapped a chalk line in between. The reason I did that is because walls are not known to be straight. So on these first couple rows from the wall, our main star of today, the hardwood nailer, is not going to fit here. It's too close to the wall. So to deal with that, I'm going to use a finish nailer until I can get my big nailer in place. If you have a hammer like this is made to hit the hardwood. See how it's angled here? If you're sliding it flat on the floor, it doesn't contact the finish of the hardwood, and there you have it. Just nail it in the back a couple times, and then just nail in the tongue there like the hardwood nailer would nail. Okay, so I wanted to show some information here. I'm still working on the first row. I'm down here at the end of the hallway with a door, and this is where the piece goes, right, on the chalk line right here. And of course I have this big gap here. Now if I wanted to make this one piece here across the door, how would you get that in there if you put this piece in first? So I'm not going to do that. I've already cut a piece to go in there, and if you've noticed, I flipped the tongue around so that it goes this way, and then I can get a nail through here after this piece is already in place. I need to put this piece in first and then butt these 2 pieces together, but now we have a groove side against a groove side. So I've actually made this slip tongue right here on my table saw. You can actually buy these things, but I don't have any here on the job, and I have everything I need, so I run all over town trying to find something that I can make in 5 minutes. It's probably wound up to be like a 1/4 inch thick by 3/8, something like that. And all you do is you put it through the tongue here, and now you have a tongue on one side and a tongue on the other side. And then when you put the pieces together, there's something in the middle to hold it together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue in here first, and then I'm going to kind of bang that down in there, and then I'll come back. So I got the slip joint put in there. I've got these 2 pieces already set together, and this piece is nailed down. So all I got to do is make the last piece there. So when you do the end of the row, flip the piece around so that the tongue is facing opposite what you've been working on, and then leave your space at the wall, probably close to a 1/2 inch or so right here, and then mark the board. All right, so as you can see, we kind of have a similar situation here. This is still our first row with the tongue facing this way, and now we have to fill in this area. So what are we going to do? Put the tongue in there like that and face nail every one of these? That's not going to work. We have to change direction so the tongue's going the other way, and that's where that slip tongue comes in handy, where I just showed you earlier. Put a piece in here and glue it in, and then voila, we have our tongue there, and then we can flip it around and go the other way. I also wanted to mention about where the joints are at. You don't want joints that are close together. You don't want an H joint where you would have like the joint in the same space every other row. That's not going to look good. As randomized as possible is where you want those joints to be. All right, so we're ready to start nailing these in. This is what I usually do so that I'm not making 15 million trips to the saw, is I'll rack out some rows like this. I would usually rack out even more than that, but I'm a little bit limited by the space in the hallway. So what I do is you make sure you put all the ends together so that your measurements are going to be right. And then just, and of course you see our left of space here for the nail gun to go through. And then I've got my pieces down here at the end, all flipped around and marked, ready to take out to the saw. So this way I can take 5 pieces at a time, even more than that. So you can use both sides of the hammer. This side of the hammer is angled back, so you can use it like that. But I almost prefer to use this side because I can bang them in a lot faster. I usually will bang in the whole row. So usually when you start the rows, I'll put the first piece in and get at least one nail in it. That way as I go down the row and hit each one with a hammer, I don't wind up moving that first piece into the wall. If you wind up with ugly pieces like that, a closet is a great place for them. So like I said, get one nail in it, then it won't move. Do something like this so you don't put a hole in the drywall, and you can get more pressure on it like that. It's pretty easy if you have one of these oscillating tools. They also make a saw if you don't have one of these tools that you can buy at Lowe's for about 20 bucks. Made just for that purpose, but I like to use this oscillating tool because to me it's just a lot easier. So I took a scrap piece of wood and turn it over, and that's how you do it. You just cut it. I'm not going to cut the door jamb all the way because we have a piece of carpet right here. So just take a chisel to finish it off. That's it. Just vacuum that up and do the same thing on all the other door jambs. And each piece that you put in here is going to be a little bit different. And we're down here at the end of the hallway, as you can see. And I want to put a transition there. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you this when I get to it, is put a piece of wood in there this way, because all the other flooring is going to come in this way. So it's going to hit the end of the wood. And this way, if I ever tear out this carpet later, I can add more hardwood in the other room without having to disturb the floor that I'm putting in right now. So earlier I showed you how to do a doorway that was parallel to the flooring, and that was the easy doorway. But this one I was briefly explaining is perpendicular, and my flooring is going to hit in here, and I want to have this nice and tight all the way across. So in order to get this straight, I've stacked about 3 boards right here that aren't nailed down, and I'm going to use a square to determine where this is straight at. Right there, it's pretty straight. All right, hold that in there tight. And you can mark the floor with a pencil or a pen or something like that. And I could nail this through the face right here if I knew I wasn't going to do anything in the other room. But one day we may tear this out and continue the flooring in there. And if I do, I'll have to replace this board if it's full of holes. So what we're going to do is nail it here in the front and just make sure it stays on that line and stays square. And then when I butt the flooring up in there, the groove is on this side. And the other side, when I continue later one day, the tongue is already made to go into that groove. So that's going to work just perfect. Now to get these as tight as possible, I like to work from left to right when I nail my flooring in. But down here, if I start the flooring on this end, I'm going to be working from right to left. So I'm just going to have to work from right to left and start the flooring in here and go this way. That way, every one of these is a fresh, I can place it in here instead of depending on a perfect cut to make these all line up perfectly, and I'll just cut them on the other end of the house. I just wanted to show you one example here of how I do the doors. I've already undercut this with the tool that I showed you earlier, all right, with a scrap piece of wood. And this piece here will fit under here like so. Okay, like that. And it's, well, I got to pull it away from the wall a little bit. So if you need to pull one away from the wall, for example, here, when I put this piece in, if there's a little bit of a gap right here, with the next piece, you can do this little trick right here, and be careful not to damage the drywall, but you can use this to scoot that over and close that gap. And then the next piece will fit in here like so. Okay, see, that looks real nice right there. And do the same thing on the other side. So here's the last row right here on this. So if you can see, there's a little hole right here, so you got to make sure that's covered up. But not much more. You're going to need room to move these back and forth like that so that you can get it in there. See, there you go. There we go. Nail the last row with the, I can't get the big nailer in here with the tile, so I'm going to use my finish nailer in there, and then this will cover that up right there, okay? Yeah, I just wanted to film this and show you, you've got to be creative sometimes to get these pieces to fit. This piece here was, pretty easy, but this second piece here, had to cut some fancy cut here to get that in there. So just wanted to show you that. It fits now. But sometimes every situation is different. I'm just showing you an example. There we go. Sometimes on these long boards here, they don't just go in real easy, and a light tap with this hammer is just not good enough. Sometimes you have to get a little bit aggressive with it, so if that happens, it's good to have a little sacrificial scrap piece there. And I just wanted to show a little trick that I use sometimes when you run into this. Some of these pieces are like potato chips because they're natural wood. See, I've got one end nailed and the other end is a big alfalfa down here. If you drive a screwdriver or a chisel, something like that, into the wood, into the plywood, have somebody hold that back. Go ahead and pull it back. So you can close that gap and hold it there and nail it in. As you start to get close to the wall here on the opposite side, you're going to notice that your hammer is going to become really hard to swing. You might be able to get a swing on that, maybe, but it's going to be pretty hard without beating up the wall. So what you have to do is take your finish gun and hold it into the groove or the tongue like this and shoot the nails in the same place that the hardwood nailer does until you get to the end. And then once the finish gun won't work anymore because you can't angle it into the wall, you have to face nail the top. Probably on the last 2 rows, and then just use some putty to cover up those nails. So I just wanted to say something else. As you are working with your finish nailer, you are going to have these gaps in here are just natural to the wood. And a little gap like this, the hardwood nailer was strong enough to push that out, but the finish nailer is not. So as you're doing this nailing with your finish nailer, you're going to have to rely on the chisel a little bit more to push the wood back and then nail it like this. Yep. And every time you run into that, you're going to have to do that. They do make a jack that you can push against the wall to the flooring, but I don't have any fancy tools like that, so chisel. As you get closer to the wall here, your hammer doesn't really have much room, well, a little bit. But if you run into a trouble piece, usually it happens at a joint. What you can do is stack a couple pieces like that, and then you can use the pry bar to push it in place. See, it's being stubborn, but it's going. Also, one thing you should notice, when you're nailing like this, don't lean your hand right here, because all that nail has to do is hit a nail in the subfloor, and it's going to turn right around and come through the top. So these HVAC vents are pretty straightforward. I've got the piece in place with the end tight together, and then I just marked these areas here. And to get this measurement, if you have an L piece like this, you know, where you're just cutting here, it's easier because you can actually see where this is at. But if you have a piece that falls like this, like a U, then you'll have to pull this back here and get a measurement from here, and then transfer that measurement here so that you can complete it. As you can see here, this last row needed to be ripped as expected. You might get lucky once in 1,000 jobs that you won't have to rip the last piece and it'll fit perfectly, but that's going to be rare. So they do have a flat heater vent that you can buy that's tongue and groove, and it fits right in there with the tongue and groove of the flooring. But I didn't do that. I'm just using conventional vents. Just gotta kind of work it in there. When you're nailing, try not to nail too close to the ends or you're gonna split it. All right, so that's how you put in hardwood flooring. Thanks for watching.